Have you ever sat down with a language app full of motivation, only to find yourself completely frustrated an hour later? You listen to a native speaker and the words just fly out in a blur. You try to form a sentence and it comes out clunky and awkward. In that moment of frustration, you ask yourself the same question that many of us have. Why can't I just learn a language like a child? Welcome to Aptus Lingua, the podcast where we deconstruct the science of language learning to give you better strategies. I'm your host, and in this first episode, we'll tackle the foundational question, why you can't just learn like a child. We're going to dismantle the myths of the effortless child learner and explore the blueprint of how our brains are wired for language. Because here's the truth, an adult cannot learn a language like a child. And by the end of this episode, you'll understand that this isn't a limitation, it's a starting point. It's a starting point for a smarter, more effective way to learn. First, let's talk about the unfair advantage every child has when learning their first language. It's not magic, it's a perfect storm of three factors that adults can never fully replicate. The first is the environment. A child is in a state of total 24/7 immersion. Even before they are born, they are surrounded by a constant stream of language in a variety of contexts. As they grow, they have the support of loved ones tailoring the language exactly to their level and praising them for every mama and dada, patiently repeating and correcting them. In this bubble of love, they're fearless about making mistakes. The second advantage is motivation. For a child, learning to communicate is not a hobby or a resume builder. It's a foundational, existential need. They need to communicate to get food, to express discomfort, to connect with their family. That intrinsic drive is the most powerful engine for learning imaginable. For adults, our motivation is often external. A job, a trip, and it can be much more fragile. So, you have the perfect environment and significant motivation. That's the child's starting line. But even those powerful external factors are only half the story. The real difference lies inside the brain itself. That's the third, and maybe the most important advantage that their brain has. Their brain is optimized for implicit learning. The simplest way to understand the difference between a child's brain and an adult's brain is with an analogy. A child's brain is like wet clay, while an adult's brain is like fired pottery. From birth, a child's brain is in a state of what scientists call transient exuberance. It is an explosion of growth, forming thousands of new neural connections every second. By the time a child is 2 or 3, they have about 15,000 synapses or connections per neuron. Their brain is a dense, interconnected forest to be shaped by any experience, any sound, any language mountains. This is the peak of what we call neuroplasticity. But then the brain starts to optimize. It begins a crucial process called synaptic pruning. You can think of this like a gardener trimming a rose bush. The brain operates on a use it or lose it principle. The neural connections that are used frequently, like the ones for your native language, are strengthened. The ones that aren't used are pruned away. This process eliminates about 40% of the initial connections and makes the brain a far more efficient and powerful machine. Pathways for your first language become robust, permanent superhighways. This is fantastic for fluency in your native tongue, but it makes it much harder to build a brand new highway system for another language later on. So the key takeaway here is crucial. Your adult brain isn't worse or broken. It's been expertly specialized. It's not a blank slate, it's a highly optimized machine, finely tuned for the skills and language you use every single day. Now you may be thinking, okay, that makes sense for a first language, but what about kids who learn a second or even a third language? Doesn't the magic still work for them? That is a great question, and the answer depends entirely on when they start. Linguists break this down into 2 categories. The first is simultaneous bilingualism. This is when a child is exposed to 2 or more languages from birth, or at least by the age of 3. In this case, they are essentially acquiring 2 first languages, and the research is clear. These children had all the same developmental milestones, like saying their first word or their first 2-word sentence, at the same time as children who are learning only 1 language. Their brains simply build 2 sets of those superhighways from the very beginning. But what if a child learns 1 language first, and then starts a second later on, say after age 3? This is called sequential bilingualism, and here, age starts to become a much more interesting factor. Research shows a fascinating trade-off. Older children, maybe between the ages of 8 and 12, often learn a second language faster in the beginning than very young children. Their brains are more cognitively developed, and they grasp concepts more quickly. However, and this is the most important part, younger children almost always win in the long run. They are the ones who achieve higher ultimate proficiency, especially when it comes to mastering a native-like accent. So while an older child might have a faster start, the younger child has the advantage for reaching the highest peak of fluency. So let's bring this all together. We can't learn a language like a child because our entire learning context is different. Our environment isn't a 24/7 immersive pod, our motivation isn't a matter of survival, and our psychology is often hampered by subconsciousness and a fear of failure. And most importantly, our brain is a different machine. A child's brain is in the process of building its fundamental operating system from scratch. An adult brain is trying to install complex new software onto an operating system that's already been fully configured and optimized for something else. But I want to be very clear, this is not bad news, it's empowering. It means you can stop blaming yourself for not just picking it up like a child does. It means that you can let go of the frustrating and ineffective strategies of trying to learn like a child. Instead, you can start using the unique and powerful tools that are only available to the adult brain. Your brain may not be wet clay anymore, but that fired pottery is strong, structured, and capable of incredible things when you use the right techniques. And that is exactly what we're going to explore in our next episode. We'll dive into the brain's two learning toolkits, the slow, deliberate tortoise and the fast, automatic hare, and how understanding both is the key to unlocking your adult brain's learning potential. Thanks for listening to Aptus Lingua. Subscribe so you don't miss our next episode. And if you're on YouTube, leave a comment and tell me what's been your biggest frustration learning a language as an adult. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, happy learning.